All right, let's talk about this fun episode of NXT from September 23rd, 2025. Then we'll get into No Mercy predictions. Quite a few developments on NXT, man. So we can't just skip the show. I mean, there's actual stuff happening here. All right, Lexus King loses to Miles Bourne in their lights out match, which was essentially no holds barred in the dark. It was actually all right. They used the tables, chairs, belt, an announce desk, and a trash can and a steel stairs as weapons. And it was a fun match. It was actually one of the better matches that Lexus King has had since he's been in WWE. He's been there for a little while now. Miles Bourne won with the, I don't know, I forgot what the hell he's calling it. Bourne again? I think that's the name of his finisher, but it's essentially the zigzag. And it went through a table. So this was pretty good. They actually gave him a lot of time too. So this was essentially the main event of the day. It was the first match, but it was essentially the main event because it went on a very long time. All right. They did a couple of segments here. Number one segment that they did is that Ava, it was not at NXT. Oddly enough, she booked one of the biggest matches that she could possibly do, which was Trick Williams versus Obafemi, and then she decided not to show up to work. She went to England for some odd reason, and she left Stevie Turner and Mr. Stone in charge. And they're trying to tell her that TNA wrestlers are popping up all over the place in NXT where they invited. But Ava was not listening because she had poor cell phone service. You think The Rock would be able to get his daughter better cell phone service than this, but I can't believe she took a week off in the biggest possible match that they was about to have. Anyway, various TNA wrestlers were seen looming in the background, from Eric Young and Steve Macklin to Matt Cardona. All of them was just kind of hanging around, throughout the night. So they were building excitement, building tension that something was going to happen with them on the show. Of course, that culminates right in the main event. Trick Williams, Obafemi, TNA title versus NXT championship. You start seeing mostly women for some odd reason. One of the Iconics was there. I think only one of them was there. Oddly enough, the Iconics, who I completely forgot about, they weren't featured in NXT Homecoming, and they were a pretty popular team in NXT. They became more popular on the main roster, but they was pretty popular on NXT. The Elegance brand was there. Who else showed up? Steve Macklin, who of course was also in NXT. He was nothing in NXT, so I'm not surprised. But most importantly, Eric Young and Mike Santana showed up. Eric Young was in NXT for a while, of course, during the Black and Gold era. He was a member of Sanity. So, there's some people who had been in NXT before. Zaya Brookside, who was formerly NXT UK talent. So a lot of those people showed up here. Mike Santana jumped the barricade to do commentary for Trick Williams and Obafemi, and they had a pretty solid match. They weren't going out there to have the best match that they could possibly have because, the finish was going to be what it was going to be. But they went out there and did pretty good. They kicked out of each other's finishers, which, led me to believe that there might actually be a real finish to this match. But when it came down to it, Trick Williams smacked Mike Santana. Santana attacked Trick Williams, and the fight was on. Everybody started to brawl. The locker room emptied. The TNA guys jumped the barricade. It was a TNA NXT brawl, and it was fun. And I thought this was very much necessary in order to elevate TNA in terms of them being kicked around by NXT for the last several months. So this was very well done. It was a smart finish. It was the correct thing to do. I wish there was more men, because they're fighting over the men's title. There should be more men involved. There was way too many women involved with this situation, but they had a whole lot of women. Interestingly enough, Ricky Starks paid no attention to TNA and NXT scrapping. Instead, he walked over to the NXT title and took it in his hands, only for Obafemi to snatch it away from him. and the two of them stared at each other as the show went off the air. This was a pretty good visual story that Ricky Starks is not concerned with TNA. He's not concerned with what everybody else got going on. He's singularly focused on this NXT championship. They even did a great vignette for him, the Ricky Goes Home segment. They did it almost the exact same segment that they did for Lola Vice, where he got to talk about where he came from, where is he going, why is he here. He talked about, being the embodiment of New Orleans, from the street vendors to the artists to all the people he met in the street, and how Hurricane Katrina, or as he called it, the storm, took his childhood home. So we got to visit the vacant lot where the home used to be. They had some photos of him as a kid. And man, he had white boy hair. I mean, that stuff was, it laid down. It was almost like Brad Pitt's hair. Is he some kind of quadroon? It had, I've never seen a Negro with hair like that before. Yeah, not on purpose anyway, not without a perm. But this is like a childhood picture. I don't think they were perm his hair as a kid. But, wow. I think that's that Creole stuff, huh? What y'all got going on down there in New Orleans? What kind of Negroes are y'all? In any event, he talked about NXT, and everything he does in wrestling is about survival. He doesn't let bad circumstances define who he is. And winning the NXT title is not just about winning the belt. It's about proving that he is who he says he is. And it's about ushering in the absolute era. This is what I'm talking about when I mentioned that you need to add some layers to LA Knight. This is what I'm talking about, because Ricky Starks is also a character that is very cool. He's very witty. He talks slick. He's all about fashion and all that kind of stuff. You don't necessarily need to show a lot of vulnerability with him, but it's good to know that it's there, that something drives him, something that, is pushing him forward. They did a good job of relating him to the audience. They even did some man on the street stuff with him walking around talking to various people. It looked like he was on Bourbon Street. It looked fun. It looked cool. It was great. Very well done. I wish they'd have done this weeks ago, but this was very much necessary now. And I want to save my prediction, but I'm pretty sure that guy's going to win that title. All right. Ethan Page, he comes out to cut a promo, and he welcomes Wagner 3G, or as he called it, Dr. Wagner Jr., who is his father, by the way. Says that he would be a double champ if it wasn't for Dr. Wagner Jr. screwing him at Worlds Collide. And then Dr. Wagner Jr. put quotations around that, laughed at him. So Ethan Page snapped, challenged him to a match right now. Dr. Wagner Jr. jumped into the ring and made Ethan Page submit immediately, only to unmask. And it was Tavion Heights. How he got his fro under that mask is crazy. How he got that fro under that mask is crazy. I got plenty of masks. All right. It's murder trying to get locks, afros, or anything like that in a lucha mask. The fact that he got away with this and I didn't even notice it is pretty damn good. Pretty cool storytelling here. They linked the two feuds together, having Tavion Heights get the best of Ethan Page. And it didn't take a long time to do it either. So I was very appreciative of that. Jordynne Grace and Ariana Grace had a backstage issue with Ariana being very shady, as the young women say. So Jordynne Grace challenged her to a match, which of course Jordynne Grace won. After that, Stax came out to comfort Ariana Grace, because they're together in real life. So now they're putting them together on screen. Very weird decision making when it comes to Stax, because he's the Heritage Cup champion, but it seems like that Heritage Cup thing is over and we're done with that. And he's also not a mobster anymore, because Tony D'Angelo, who is that? Where did he go? He's been gone for 3 months. Who knows? But they're pivoting with Stax and they're doing something different with him, which I don't hate. Again, It's very hard. Seth Rollins seems to be the only man that if you put a woman with him, he doesn't improve. You know, you could probably put a woman with Stacks and he'll improve. Jordan Grace, on the other hand, well, she's still dealing with Mariah May, who tried to sneak attack her with a pink kendo stick. Instead, Jordan Grace got hit Mariah May with a chair. Eventually, Mariah May got the upper hand, and they started to brawl before being separated. At this point, Stevie Turner comes out to make their match at No Mercy a weapons match. Not to be undone, Mr. Stone decides that there needs to be a steel cage too. So it's going to be a steel cage weapons match at No Mercy. Wow. I mean, we're escalating quite a bit here. This would be so much better if there was going to be blood. It's not going to be blood, but I like how we got here. Mariah May said that she's going to give Jordan Grace hell, and this is her best opportunity to do so. All right. Lainey Reed defeated Candice LeRae to win the Speed tournament. Therefore, she will be facing Sol Ruca for the Speed title at No Mercy. The match between Sol Ruca and Lainey Reed was actually very good. I like the Speed matches because it forces the wrestlers to work at a faster pace, and it also allows for better storytelling. For instance, Lainey Reed won this match with a knee strike, but it was clearly like a knee strike that in a normal match would not have even occurred. Like, it looked like Candice LeRae kind of just walked into it, or she rushed into trying to win the match and just kind of got caught in the knee. Like, that was great. So this is good. Later, Lainey Reed is backstage talking about how she's going to beat Sol Ruca when JC Jane shows up. JC Jane dismisses Fallon Henley and Jasmine Nix while wishing Lainey Reed the best of luck at No Mercy because, well, she was impressed by Lainey Reed. Now, this whole thing started with Lainey Reed kind of floating around JC Jane a couple of weeks ago. So she's been putting out the pheromones to try to get JC Jane's attention. So she's finally got him, apparently. JC Jane then went to the ring to cut a promo on Lola Vice. And to truncate this, JC Jane says she, over the last 100 days, has gotten rid of all of the labels that people have put on her, that she's the most beatable, she was a transitional champion, she was the third wheel, all that stuff. She said that Lola Vice is pretending to be a pro wrestler, and while she's improved, she's not ready to be the champion. She says that while Lola Vice shakes her ass, JC Jane has been busting her ass, and she has no family help, that she is the real underdog in this story. Lola Vice came out and said this is another person talking about her ass. Well, at least she's got an ass. Then she said that JC Jane has always needed other people, while Lola Vice never has. She said last year when she wrestled for the title, she was nervous and emotional, but not this year. This year, she's serious. JC Jane claimed that Lola Vice is seeking validation, and that, hey, you might kick my ass because you're a fighter. You might break my arm. You might bust my nose. But ultimately, your family and all of their sacrifices are going to be for nothing. And you're going to be a huge disappointment because by hook or by crook, I am going to be the NXT Women's Champion after this match. And so Lola Vice knocked her on her ass. Spinning back fist. You know, JC Jane promos, maybe you should keep those short. But I like the promo from Lola Vice here. I like that they're the contrast of the characters. I like that. So they're doing something very, very solid here. Later in the show, JC Jane dumped Jasmine Nix. This was pretty funny because it was so sudden. So Javon Evans was cutting a promo on Josh Briggs. Who cares about them? Javon Evans is great, but Josh Briggs, who cares? Anyway, it was like a random crash backstage. And Jasmine Nix is laying down. She's out of it. And JC Jane is like, Fallon, I thought you were supposed to be with her. She was like, I was, but I turned my back for like a second. And then JC Jane just looks at Jasmine Nix and was like, you know, it was time to get rid of her anyway. And then Fallon Henley was like, yeah, you're right. They both just walked off. Like they both just left her there for dead. I mean, that was cold blooded. It was very heelish. I liked it. I liked the way that they did this. It came completely out of nowhere, but it works. Clearly, they're going to reveal that whoever took out Jasmine Nix is more likely going to be her replacement in Fatal Influence, which means it's probably going to be Lainey Reed. So, the question now is, what do you do with Jasmine Nix? Does she come back as a babyface and fight these girls? Because that would be proper storytelling, that she would fight the 3 members of Fatal Influence by herself. The question would be, however, does she have enough experience to pull this big storyline off? Like, can she make it work? She barely did anything in Fatal Influence. Like, she didn't really talk a lot. She worked, but it's mostly tag team matches, not a lot of singles matches. And look, having a Fatal Influence split where it's kind of Jasmine and Fallon versus JC and Lainey, that could be fun. That could be interesting. It'll elevate Lainey and Jasmine, and gives you a reason to keep Fallon and JC Jane in NXT for a little bit longer. So there's a whole lot of different things you could do here, but I really liked this segment because it just shows that JC Jane has, not only is she very full of herself, but now she's incredibly cold-blooded. And it was even funnier that Fallon Henley kind of agreed with her because they don't agree on anything these days, but they agreed that only the strong should survive. So that ought to be fun. We got a promo from Jada Parker, who said that Lash Legend did beat her the last time, but she wants her to frame that dub because after the match, Big Jada Parker applied all kinds of pressure. And she says she hits harder, talks louder, and looks better while doing it, and she's not done with Lash Legend. All right, I wish that match was at least 2-3 weeks ago. I wish this promo was sooner. Jada Parker recently, she wrestled for Booker T. But I don't know how recent that was. It looked like it might have been taped several months ago. It's what it seems like anyway. Lyra Valkyria was backstage to hang out with Tatum Paxley. Lyra Valkyria is upset that all of her friends seem to be crazy. But Tatum is the kind of weird she can count on. She's consistently weird. Izzy Dame, however, shows up and drives a wedge in between them by saying that Lyra left her once and she'll do it again. That led to Tatum Paxley really kind of thinking about it, and she left with Izzy Dame. And Lyra Valkyria was like, "Oh, what's this now? I'm screwed again. Left all by myself again with a crazy friend." Yeah, well, you're the bird girl. You're the weirdest of them all, to be quite honest. Now, I dismissed Josh Briggs earlier. I dismissed him in his promo earlier. I should not have done so, because this was actually one of the better promos on the show. It was a video package where Josh Briggs talked about hearing that he's not relatable, that he doesn't have any connection to the WWE universe. And then he says he doesn't care what fat podcasters think. He doesn't care what the fans think. They're all seat fillers anyway. And besides, they're hypocrites, because while they chant for him to go home, during his matches, they always chant, "This is awesome." And he says maybe the fans just don't get it. Maybe Javon Evans is more like them, because Javon Evans is chasing approval, and that chasing approval makes him weak. I like the promo that they did here with Josh Briggs. They turned the fans willing to chant for anything. They turned it against him, because you chant for him to go away, but you also chant "This is awesome" for his matches. Make up your mind. I thought that was pretty good. That was pretty good. And I actually was like, is he talking to me? I almost took offense to that promo for a second. I was like, is he talking to me? You been listening to these videos, homie? If you are, what's up? Anyway, the only other match on the show was Dark State defeating Chase University and Joe Hendry. So there's that. Joe Hendry, how did he end up here? Well, the booty poke guy from Dark State. That's how he ended up here. So overall, the show was very good. I always enjoy NXT. This is what I mean by a show where things happen. What happened on NXT? This was a go-home show, too, and it was very solid. You had a TNA invasion. You had a huge main event, even though it was chicanery and skullduggery, and they threw everything out. You got Jasmine Nix randomly getting booted out of Fatal Influence and taken out, too. So you got something there. You got the stakes being raised for Mariah May and Jordynne Grace. You had the conclusion to the Miles Bourne Lexus King feud. You got a couple of cameos from people who don't usually show up there. You got a nice little surprise with Tavion Heights and Ethan Page. You know, like an easy breezy 2 hours. Easy breezy. They did a whole lot of stuff without, burning everybody out and smashing 100 tables and setting people on fire and thumbtacks and shit. You can just do cool angles and leave questions in people's minds that they want answered later. And the pay-per-view is going to answer some of these questions, but also next week's episode is going to answer some of these questions too. And then, because TNA is involved, Bound for Glory is going to answer some of these questions as well. So it's a really great setup. All right, let's get into the predictions for No Mercy. We do not have WrestleTix to bounce off of. We don't know what the seating arrangements are, how many people are going to be in the building, at least not right now. But they're going to be wrestling in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the FTL War Memorial. Doesn't sound like it holds a whole lot of people, if you ask me. 6 matches on the show. All of them are one-on-one matches. No tags, no 6-man tags, nothing like that. So, and a lot of these are matches that are feuds, which is a good thing. This is a stacked show when it comes to storyline development on the NXT brand. Let's start with match number 1. Javon Evans versus Josh Briggs. All right, this feels like it's going to be a break in between 2 more important matches. I certainly have Javon Evans winning this time. He should have won the last time too. Under no circumstances should Josh Briggs be beating Javon Evans. I mean, come on, get real. It's kind of ridiculous that we had to go through that. But Javon Evans. Number 2, Blake Monroe, government name Mariah May, versus Jordynne Grace in a weaponized steel cage match. Well, I'm thinking Mariah May is going to win this. I think it's for the best that she wins this, and I think it's for the best we get her to the top of the card as quickly as possible. Jordynne Grace is main roster ready. She's just hanging out in NXT to refine some of her skills because she's still under the age of 30. They're still refining her promo skills and personality and all of that. But she's pretty much main roster ready right now. Mariah May is mostly main roster ready, but I guess they're working on how they want to present her. I don't think they're going to change Jordynne Grace too much when she goes to the main roster. They didn't change her a lot when she came from TNA. So I'm going to go with Mariah May's going to win. Singles match, NXT North American Championship, Ethan Page versus Tavion Heights. Now, I want Tavion Heights to win. I would love that. That would be great. The problem here is that they seemingly are doing something with Ethan Page and Dr. Wagner Jr. III. So it seems like they might be going in a title versus title situation down the road with the Latin American AAA Championship and this North American title. If they choose to go that route, then obviously Ethan Page is going to win because it's all about the North American gimmick. Tavion Heights, we've been waiting for so long for this guy to finally break through and get a chance, and it's finally here, and they decided to tease us with Ethan Page doing something with somebody else in AAA. Under normal circumstances, it would not get in the way But since it's clearly about the titles, about, this guy is a Mexican calling himself the Latin American champion, and this guy's Canadian, he's the North American champion. I mean, that's just they're kind of on a collision course here. So while my heart wants Tavion Heights to win, I'm going to go with Ethan Page. Next, Sol Ruca versus Laney Reed for the Women's Speed Championship. I think the Speed title for championship matches is 5 minutes, I think, which is about 2 minutes more than a normal match. I would not hate that Laney Reed won this match, but I think Sol Ruca maintaining her momentum is a good thing. Now, I think she probably could lose this and focus on her North American title, but I think that they like the idea of Sol Ruca having 2 belts, and I think they like her in this format. And this format works for Sol Ruca. It works for Laney Reed too. I'm going to go with Sol Ruca wins because this is her first defense on NXT TV. I think they certainly want to establish her as having the ability to beat anybody in 5 minutes and really establish the Soul Snatcher as a great finish. Even though, she's a double champion already, I would love it if this is where Zarya officially turned heel on Sol Ruca and cost her this title. That would be amazing. That would actually lift my spirits because I want Zarya away from Sol Ruca so bad. But it's taken so long for it to actually happen. So I'm going to go with Sol Ruca because I don't think they're going to do the whole Zarya switch yet. So Sol Ruca. I do, however, think that Laney Reed will be elevated on this show because I think she's going to get involved with JC Jane versus Lola Vice for the NXT Women's Championship. I think it's going to come down to it where JC Jane is going to need some help. She's going to look to Fallon Henley, and Fallon Henley's either going to pull a Rock where she's going to pretend to help her and walk off, kind of like what Ron Simmons did to The Rock, or she's going to actively try to help Lola Vice win or actively abandon JC Jane, and then Laney Reed's going to pick up the slack. Now, it's entirely possible, and I think it's actually more likely that Lola Vice just wins the title here. Lola Vice seems to have been in position to win the belt last year. And then they got a hint of Julia and Stephanie Vaquer, and that just took them in a completely different direction. Like, especially earlier this year, it seemed like Lola Vice was right there, especially when she was feuding with Shayna Baszler, and they were doing stuff in NXT. It seemed like she was right there and making it happen. And then they signed those 2 big free agents, and people forgot about Lola Vice for a while. And yes, Lola Vice has been doing stuff in AAA, and she's been working with Los Toxicos. Well, she's been working with Mr. Iguana mostly, but she's been in a storyline with La Hydra from Los Toxicos. And Flammer, who is the AAA Reina de Reinas, the women's champion, I think they're telling this story right now where Natalya is about to wrestle for that belt. So maybe they'll give it to Natalya. But it's always possible that if Lola Vice doesn't win this, she wins the AAA women's title instead. But I think she's going to win this. Obviously, we're near the end of Fatal Influence. And we're about to see how this thing's going to break up, how it's going to burst apart. And it might just be that Fallon Henley turns on JC Jane and helps Lola Vice win. That's entirely possible. And then we get the Lola Vice championship run that we were supposed to get earlier this year. And then you get Laney Reed partnering up with JC Jane against Fallon Henley and Jasmine Nix. It's entirely possible we do that. So while my head says that JC Jane is going to win because they've been using Lola Vice mostly in AAA, I think I'm going to go with Lola Vice wins the title. Main event time, Obafemi versus Ricky Starks for the NXT Championship. You gotta go with Ricky Starks here. I think it's time for NXT to make a shift, a paradigm shift. The TNA invasion thing is happening now. Trick Williams is on the verge, probably in a couple of weeks, of losing that TNA title. So it's time. And Obafemi, of course, there's always been this tease about him going to the main roster. They talk about it pretty much every month. I don't think they're going to pull him to the main roster yet, and I don't think they should. I like the idea of Obafemi fighting on behalf of NXT in this brawl with TNA. So I would like to keep him there. Also, I would like a rematch to this match because I got a feeling this match is going to be a banger. I got a feeling this is going to be really good. I'm going to go with Ricky Starks wins because I think that's the most obvious choice. And I think that if you're talking about launching Ricky Starks and launching NXT, you still have to start shaking people who've been around for a while. JC Jane's been around for a while, giving her something different to do. She's been champion all year. It's near the end of the year. It's almost the fall. JC Jane's had a really good year. Move her to the side. Let's get Lola Vice in this thing. Obafemi has had a fantastic 2 years. Hell, maybe even 3 in WWE as the North American champion and as the NXT champion. Him losing to Ricky Starks wouldn't hurt him at all. It would be a great launch for Ricky Starks, and maybe we can get something done at the top of NXT because now Obafemi isn't gobbling up everybody and destroying everybody, and you can get some different matches here. That being said, maybe the question should be whether Ricky Starks should turn heel or not. I think it's something they should consider. Ricky Starks is much better as a heel. He connects with the audience much better as a heel. I think that what they're doing with Javon Evans, they need a heel for him to work with. Yes, you got Trick Williams is still there, but I think Ricky Starks in a heel position versus Javon Evans could be really good. That being said, it's also entirely possible that Obafemi's holding that belt until they decide to put it on Javon. But I'm thinking it needs to be Ricky Starks right now as a babyface. And he needs to get a short babyface run, but he probably needs to turn heel while he's the champion. I would do something like that, where I would have him be champion for about 90 days, 100 days, something like that, as a babyface, and then turn heel in the middle of his title run. You could do stuff like that to make it interesting, but the men's division in WWE is so incredibly weak that maybe they can't afford to do that. Maybe they can't afford to, sacrifice somebody that they just brought in terms of turning them heel. And they need to fix that. They need to sign some guys that can go right now, at least in the mid card and the upper card of the men's division. Tons of guys out there. Or they need to bring in some guys from TNA, one or the other. But they need to fill in their roster a little bit more because it's very thin at the top. But that's also why I think Ricky Starks winning is for the best, because it breaks the monotony of Javon Evans, Trick Williams, and Obafemi that we've been dealing with pretty much all year. That triune needs to be separated. And it's clear that Trick Williams is about to go off and do his thing with TNA. And they got the biggest pay-per-view they're going to have this year coming up in October in just a couple of weeks. And Javon Evans is still busy with Josh Briggs. So it's time for Obafemi to go off to greener pastures, in my view. All right. That's NXT. No Mercy. I don't know what I'm going to have for this show. It might be Chinese food. Might get some sesame chicken or something like that. But I'm very much excited for this. The day before is actually going to be TNA's Victory Road show. The only thing that is NXT related on TNA Victory Road is Ridge Holland versus Mike Santana, because they brought in Ridge Holland for TNA. Look, they're putting that guy wherever they can find him. they're wherever he might fit. They're trying to find a place for Ridge Holland, man. God bless him. I don't think he's bad. I just think he's bland. But they put him in Evolve. He was in Evolve for 3 weeks. Then he attacked Santana on TNA. That was very, very random. He immediately gets a pay-per-view match with Mike Santana, which he's going to put Santana over. So we'll see. But that's the only thing TNA NXT related. Everything else is seemingly just TNA, except for this Masha Slamovich situation, which I'm surprised she hasn't been pulled from this show yet, because she's booked to wrestle for the title on this show. That ought to be interesting. That ought to be interesting. But let me know what you guys think of NXT. What you guys think of No Mercy? What are you guys going to cook or have as special meals for No Mercy? Let me know in the comment section below. I'll talk to you guys later. Be blessed.